I think the unfortunate reality is that for 99% of independent artists, we're not going to have smash hits like Sabrina Carpenter or Bruno Mars. But is it even realistic to want to do music as a full-time career, or is it just a dream? Well, the good news is that it's not just a dream, because I've done it. And I want to show you how to do it too. And I've just released a book today that's all about this, how to make a living as an independent artist. It's called The Independent Artist's Playbook, and you can find it via the link in my description. That way. And I thought I'd start by sort of sharing my journey with you, how I went from knowing absolutely nothing about music at 18 years old to now doing it full-time for the last 6 years. So I'm originally from Perth, Australia, which isn't exactly known for being a musical hotspot. And I really knew nothing about music up till that point when I was 18. I never played an instrument. I never knew any music theory. I'd never touched music production software. I really was starting from ground zero. So for the first 5 years, I did nothing except learn and make really, really shitty beats. I went on YouTube and watched a bunch of music production tutorials, downloaded Ableton, and I also bought a grade school level music theory book, which was just a really basic book on music theory. I also bought a grade school piano book to teach myself the keys a little bit. And I just enjoyed making music for 5 years and learning. I was trying to absorb as much as I can. And one thing I talk about in the book, which I think is really important, is that this learning phase is really, really important, because there's stuff that I learned back then which I still use in my music today. So having this initial learning phase is super key. And I never thought it could be a career at that point either. I was really just having fun. And it wasn't until much later that I got the confidence to think that I could do it as a full-time thing. So after about 5 years or so, my music had gotten to the point where I was at least happy enough with it that I could upload it onto Soundcloud. So that's what I did. I just started chucking stuff up on Soundcloud. There was no real strategy behind it. I got some really basic artwork made, put the song on SoundCloud, and that was it. I knew nothing about music promotion, or I didn't even think about promoting my music at that point. I was just wanted to get it out there in the world. I think back then I assumed that just by putting it on the internet that it would, blow up and become world famous. But it was a great habit to get into, just sharing my music on the internet, because I'd never heard from any of my friends or family, because I'd never showed them my music. I'd never heard that anyone actually liked what I was doing. And so putting it on SoundCloud, which was a really buzzing place at the time, lots of underground music was being shared there. I started to get these comments from people that said, "Oh, this is a really cool track. Like, I love this beat. I love this bass line that you did." And hearing that was just it built so much confidence in me, because it was the first time that other people had told me they liked what I did. And that really gave me confidence to say, well, maybe I can do this as a career at some point. If a few people like it, I'm sure there's other people out there in the world who will like it too. But at the same time I was at uni, I was doing an engineering degree, and that was really getting in the way of my music production. But I felt this enormous pressure that, that was the pathway I was supposed to take, but I really hated it. I didn't love going to uni. I wasn't interested at all in engineering. And so there came a point where I had to make this mad decision to leave university and pursue music full time. And that was probably one of the hardest decisions of my career, because I'd only been doing music for a couple of years. There was no, apart from the few comments on SoundCloud, there was no real evidence to suggest that this career was a viable option. It was a much riskier path. But somehow I mustered up the courage to tell my parents and my friends and family that, I was going to leave uni and pursue music and DJing full time. And that, as you can imagine, wasn't taken too well, because they'd invested a lot of time and energy into my schooling and to, put me on that pathway of a safe career. But I just felt within my gut that it wasn't for me. And for some mad reason, I thought this music thing was going to work out. So I left uni and I really just started diving into music, learning even more, getting better at the keys, getting better at production, releasing more music, taking music a little bit more seriously too. I started to get some press shots done. I got my social media profiles going. And there came a time in 2016 where I just felt that I needed to leave Perth, because there wasn't a lot happening there musically. And so I decided to pack up and move to London in 2016. And that was a really massive turning point, because going from Perth, where I was being told that, when are you going to give up music and find a real job, to now going to London and meeting all of these producers, singers, industry people who are in the music business, they are doing it full time, was hugely confidence building too, because I was now talking face to face to people who were living my dream, who were doing music full time, doing it as their career. And so for those 2 years, I continued releasing music. I started putting stuff up on Spotify at that point, and just getting as much stuff out there into the world as I can, and trying to network, meet as many people as I could, so that I could try and make something happen. I didn't know exactly what the pathway was going to be at that point, but I just knew that I had to meet people and get in the industry. And then in 2018, I really wanted to stay in London, but my visa ran out and I was sent packing back to Australia, which felt like a big blow because I'd moved over to London to make my music dream happen. It hadn't quite happened yet. I was still a tennis coach. Tennis coaching was my part-time job right up until sort of 2018, 2019. I was tennis coaching and producing music in the spare time. The good thing about tennis coaching was that I only had to work 20 to 25 hours a week. So I still had like, you know, another 20 hours at least to be doing music in between that. And anyway, I got sent back to Australia. I went back to my old coaching job. I'd felt like an absolute failure. I was really considering if I'd made the right choice because it hadn't worked out in London. I wasn't really feeling like I'd made massive inroads into doing music as a career because I wasn't earning that much money. I'd released a bit of music, but none of it had really taken off properly yet. So I was really considering whether or not this dream was still possible, but I kept going. And when I was back in Australia, I immediately felt that I couldn't stay here. I needed to get back over to Europe where there was much more happening in the music world. And while I was in London, I'd gone over to Berlin and met a few people over there. I thought the music scene was really cool. So I decided to pack up again and move to Berlin in 2019. And that was also a huge turning point in my music career because it was very lucky, actually. I was still planning to be a tennis coach, but it was very hard to get a tennis coaching job when you don't speak German. And so I just packed up and moved there without really thinking or planning too much. And it turned out to be a really lucky decision because, I moved there, I tried to find a coaching job, couldn't do it, no one would employ me. And luckily I had made a few connections in the sample pack world and I'd started to release a few sample packs on Splice, Loop Masters. And so I was earning a tiny bit of money from those. But when I couldn't get the coaching job, I had no other option but to make the music thing work somehow because that's the only thing else apart from tennis coaching that I knew how to do. So I dived in a little bit harder into the sample pack world and I reached out to those companies. I started putting some more packs out there and luckily some of them started to do really well and I was able to make just enough money to survive. I was just scraping by. I once got to the point where I had less than probably 10 euros in my bank account, which is like 12, 13 US dollars. And I was eating spaghetti sandwiches for breakfast, lunch and dinner. It was, it was very skint times. And that also turned out to be a real key moment because I did feel like a big piece of shit when I had less than 10 euros in my bank account. And knowing what that felt like really encouraged me to never want to be in that position again. So I had this thing that was like, I never want to be there again. And I want to move towards this place where I can be a full-time musician and, earn some better money and make a good living with music. So it was this kind of magnetic force where, I'm being pushed away from that thing there and then I'm being pulled towards this other good thing. That's been really powerful over the last 6 years of my career. So anyway, I pushed through being broke and I managed to survive. I remember the exact day that things started to turn around and, money started becoming less of an issue. So I'd released a bunch of Splice packs called Future Funk and Soul. You can still find them today on Splice. And I hadn't really seen much of a royalty check come in from that yet. But I remember walking home one night while I was in Berlin. I got this email from Splice saying, the royalties from the last period have come through. And I opened up the email. It was a few $1,000s and I think I jumped up in the air. My feet were off the ground. I felt so relieved that, my music dream was still alive, at least for a little while, because up until that point, I'd never really seen that amount of money come in one go. So that motivated me to keep going. I dived into the sample packs even more. I started putting more out there. Then I really jumped into making content, releasing more music. And so the other streams of income started to build up a little bit, like my streaming royalties started to grow, my publishing royalties as well. I figured out how to register my publishing rights with a collection society. And so I started earning a little bit of money from there. I started to post way more on social media as well. So that brought in a little bit of work. People who liked my music, they reached out and they wanted me to do productions for them. I got some mixing and mastering work as well. And so yeah, that time in Berlin was really tough in a lot of ways, but it was also really amazing because I'd figured it out. It wasn't exactly in the way that I planned it would be. Like I thought that I'd be able to walk into a coaching job one day and say, oh, I've had a hit song. I've got a huge record deal. I can quit tennis coaching now and finally dive into music. But it was a lot different to how I expected, but I'm really thankful that it did happen. And I'm sort of proud of myself that I had the courage to, stick at it even when I was broke and nothing was really happening. And so now I live in Portugal. I'm in Lisbon. I've been here for 3 years. And over the last 3 to 6 years, including the Berlin stuff, I've just built upon everything that I learned in terms of making a living. And so it's developed a lot now. There's lots more than just making music and sample packs that brings in income. It's, you know, there's obviously the sample packs, the streaming royalties, the publishing royalties, there's music for advertising, there's stuff that comes through social media, there's affiliate marketing, there's brand deals, and a lot more which I detail in the book, which again, if you want to check that out, is in the link in my description down here. And yeah, it's just been a way longer process than I originally imagined it would be. When I started, I had this 5-year plan that I was going to become a full-time musician earning $50,000 a month, which was very optimistic. But yeah, it's taken me 15 years to get here, and I want to share a lot of the lessons that I've learned along the way for other independent artists out there who may want to do this as a career or maybe don't believe that it's possible. And so I want to show you that it is possible and show you all the ways that you can make a career out of it. So if you're interested, once again, check out my book. It's called The Independent Artist Playbook. It's in the link in the description down here. Thanks for listening. I hope you got something out of this story, and I'll see you next time.